Hey, hi! Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner. I'm a critic, consultant, and programmer based in Toronto, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Noam Gonick, a Winnipeg filmmaker and artist whose credits include Hey Happy, Striker, To Russia with Love, and the documentary Guy Madden Waiting for Twilight. His latest doc, Parade, Queer Acts of Love and Resistance, had its world premiere at Hot Docs earlier this year and is now streaming free in Canada at the National Film Board's website, nfb.ca. And it's getting ready for a theatrical run in Winnipeg at the end of this month. If you missed it at Hot Docs, you should check it out. Noam picked Last Exit to Brooklyn, Uli Edel's 1988 adaptation of Hubert Selby Jr.'s landmark novel about the people in a 1950s working-class Brooklyn neighborhood, queer, straight, longshoremen, sex workers, husbands, fathers, wives, and daughters, whose lives are snarled up in a factory workers' strike. With an ensemble cast that includes Jennifer Jason Leigh, Stephen Lang, Stephen Baldwin, Burt Young, Jerry Orbach, Alexis Arquette, and Ricky Lake, among others, and a budget that let Edel stage the film on an almost epic scale, Last Exit made a substantial impact on the art house circuit before falling out of circulation in recent years. But it's more than ready for rediscovery, so let's get to it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Last Exit to Brooklyn is really one of my favorite films. I watched it in theaters when it first came out when I was just a kid, and I keep coming back to it. And whenever people ask me, what's your favorite movie, I keep saying Last Exit to Brooklyn.
And what do they say? Do they know it?
Less and less people have seen it now. So that's why I thought it was important for us to talk about it, to try to, get it in contention again, something that people have to see.
I'm really glad you did. It's I saw it at the time as well in '89. I was a little bit older, I guess. And I should set the stage for myself. I was 21 when it came out. And a close friend was heavily into Bukowski and said that this would line up with that he'd read the Selby book, I hadn't. And then I saw the film and I thought, well, Bukowski's a lot less generous as an author. It made me seek out the Selby text just to see how it handled it, because it didn't seem to me like an organic outgrowth. But what Uli Edel did was just rip into the misery of it, that just sort of situate yourself in this place where no one is getting anything that they want.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the reaction when the film came out too. It's sad, it's depressing, but really, I don't know if I'm a sicko or what, but when the film starts to play, I smile from ear to ear, and I love these characters. I love their situation, and I don't find anything. I mean, yeah, of course, horrible things happen to them, and yet it's all really quite thrilling. And when I show it to people, they're still on the edge of their seats. I can't believe this world of Brooklyn and New York that Selby and Udell depict. So I don't think it's a downer. And sometimes people have called my own films downers too. And I was like, yeah, I know that, we go into some dark places, but I think we find the light and the life and the humor and all that. And I think that this film does a great job of doing that.
I wonder if it isn't that the production design, the mise en scène, is so convincing, right? Like, it's sweaty and it's gross and everybody's outside all the time and angry. I mean, it feels like a really hot New York summer. And it was when they shot it, so more or less. So it is an authentic depiction. It's funny. I met Stephen Lang a few years later, 20 years later. It was
Wow.
an Avatar launch thing.
Yeah, it's weird how his career kind of went in that direction.
Oh yeah, like, what was it? 5 years later, he was in The Hard Way as the villain and he'd already made Manhunter. This, I think, Last Exit is the outlier for him, just because it's a straight dramatic role that he is incredibly good at. But because of the way he looked and the way he comported himself as an actor, he tended to just get cast in villain roles. But we did talk about Last Exit, I think, more than anything else when we were chatting, just because I had so many questions, and he was surprised that I'd seen it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they filmed at a perfect moment in Brooklyn when you could just sort of, turn the lens on that Red Hook neighborhood in 1988. And it was very convincing that it was 1952.
Yeah.
Just put a bit more garbage and old cars in the street. But, gentrification hadn't happened. And I actually went to New York for the first time that year in 88. And yeah, it was a totally different place than it is now. And actually, a few years after the film came out, I went and spent the summer in that neighborhood where they shot too, and got to know a lot of the characters who would rove around the waterfront and all that. So yeah, super great texture that you mentioned, and I mean the design looks like pulp novel covers,
Yeah.
from the 50s, like those kind of lurid, film noir posters come to life.
Yeah. It's a strange place too in American indie cinema right then, because everything is sort of scrappy realism and no budget drama. This is the Jarmusch era, and the Spike Lee had already broken, but Do the Right Thing hadn't been released yet when they made this, so it's a very different kind of New York picture, especially because it's set in period, and the big revolutions haven't happened yet. So the idea of an indie film that can just take a piece of literature and bring it to life without any stylistic tricks or any kind of
Well, it was he had a budget. Like he had the means to do it. It was a $14 million film for this West German director to come over to New York and say, like, we bring out all the extras and like let's, put all these costumes on, and then we're gonna make a big movie in Brooklyn on location. And yeah, I don't think anybody was doing that at that time. And maybe that was part of why critics and audiences and distributors and nobody could really handle what was happening, because I would put him in league with other German directors that were coming over to the States around that time, like, Paris, Texas, and, but films that were much more, heralded and celebrated. But I think this is part of that vein of these kind of outsiders coming to America, being in love with it and wanting to romanticize it, and from their unique, outsider POV.
yeah, it's more overtly queer certainly than an American filmmaker would have gone for, right? Like just the
Oh
sort of
yeah.
casual acceptance that there are trans
Hmm.
people and there are
Hmm.
gay
You're,
people.
yeah, that would have all been written out. That would have been, taken out of the studio draft, like second draft.
Oh yeah, sanitized.
Yeah.
Totally. Like, does he have to be struggling with his sexuality? Does he have to know he's gay? What if he just doesn't?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that's what gives you this incredible arc running through the entire picture for Lang to play, right? Like he is interacting with all the facets and all of the different storylines. They're sort of coming through the strike and being experienced through that character who is also negotiating his own path.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why I love Last Exit, because it's got everything I love. It's got labor unrest and then queer sexuality, like, put in a perfect package. Like what a dainty. And you mentioned the trans bit. All those queer parties that this labor leader ends up, finding himself at, those are like incredible little sequences with like the trans characters and the weird like girls who have to clean up the ashtrays in the room, and um just the fey made up gay boys of the 1950s. And I love that world, and it's just so well done. And yeah, yeah. And then I mean, I guess I'm skittering all over the place, but you mix that with the way he handled the big centerpiece strike fight scenes. Like
Yeah.
those are epic war level scenes with horses being tripped by kids throwing marbles and cannons and tear gas and people throwing rocks and trucks flying through, and it's just like massive confrontation, labor confrontation, and then I guess what the crux of it was for me was just the tra la la part, and how the novel and the film really underscore that connection between gays and sex trade workers, which is
Mhm.
something that you find in today's queer rights movement is totally, it's something that Good Company doesn't like to emphasize anymore. But in the 50s and 60s, like that was, we were in the struggle together in a way. And so when you see Lang playing this closeted union worker and then, rubbing elbows with Jennifer Jason Leigh as Tra La La, and she's this like unrepentant whore on the streets of Brooklyn. And you get those two realities vibing together, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a blueprint for common cause, isn't it?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it seemed to be, when I finally read the book, it did seem to be fairly overt in Selby's vision. Like he was aware of these communities. He was writing from a sympathetic point of view from them, which in the 1950s is not always the case. People were very happy to completely stigmatize and alienate and isolate. I mean, I suppose they still are, and certainly they are again these days. But it's a compassionate point of view, and the thing that I loved about the latest time, sorry, revisiting the film the last time I watched it, the thing that really struck me is how little sympathy Lee cares for in that performance. Like she's going big because that's who Tralala. It's like she's performing the performance. It's
Hmm.
it's it's an armor that she has, and when she does let it drop, it's just heartbreaking.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's the best role of her career for sure. Love it.
I think she won a combination award for this in Miami Blues, which both sex workers, right? Very different
Hmm.
versions, but it is like she just has such spectacular range to be
Yeah.
able to make them both like fully three-dimensional, and that comes to the scripts and that comes to the direction and all of it. But yeah, there was that little window of time where Jennifer Jason Leigh was just this incandescent talent. She's still great, but just
Hmm.
jumping into any indie project that could accommodate her.
Yeah. Her strutting around those streets in that costume and, screaming best tits in the Western world. Like that is something that me and my friends, when we watched it, that was our something we recreate that over and over again on any sidewalk that we marched on. It was just, yeah, she was iconic.
Yeah, and Lang and Lee are just the biggest names, but I mean the cast. It's funny every time I watch it, I notice someone else. I don't think I'd
Hmm.
ever figured out that Sam Rockwell was in it before.
Yeah, yeah, I think it might be his Discovery film. And Alexis Arquette,
Mm-hmm.
Burt Young, Ricky Lake.
Jerry Orbach.
Yeah, Jerry Orbach's great. Like the big he was the big union boss, and those big union rally scenes that he kind of presides over, incredible. Like incredible. It's sort of like it veers into this kind of John Sayles like secret labor history of the United States, kind of Howard Zinn mode,
Yes, very
slash,
much.
heroin addicted trans, fey boys running around. Like it's just the combo is so intoxicating.
Yeah, I thought of sales a lot in this one too. This last viewing, just because that it's the grubbiness that he loves so much, like the
Hmm.
way all of his New York movies are just lit with a little bit of smoke and just like a dirt to them, or at least they're aware of smoke and smog. And Adele just romanticizes the look of it while
Hmm.
still playing the realism. So it's
Hmm.
like I, the other thing I thought of this time, and I'm sure it's just because I'm aware of the German direction of it all, was Berlin Alexanderplatz, was
Hmm.
Fassbinder, and what is possible at that scale.
Yeah, and I would say that Tra La La kind of has a little bit of debt to Fassbinder women too. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's just like, and that horrific final sequence when she's, laid out on derelict dump and all the, dock workers line up to abuse her, and it's just, yeah, that reaches a Fassbinderian kind of height.
yeah,
And then she cradles. This is to me the crux of the film is really the love affair, unrequited love affair between the little boy, Spook, who wants to. Well, he's not a little boy; he's like a teenager, and he wants to give her the first ride on his motorcycle. and their connection, the way that he like upholds her, even though, it's clear who she is and what she is. And he's like a busboy in the neighborhood, and she's the neighborhood, prostitute. And but he loves her and worships her, and he wants to give her the first ride on his bike that he's saving up to get in the end of the film after that horrible, you know, gang rape scene. He discovers her and kind of saves her, but then she ends up cradling him because he just breaks down afterwards, and she says, "It's all right, it'll be all right," and um, that is just so devastating. I just love the way that he loves her, and that his dad, Burt Young, doesn't approve that he knows girls like that, and yeah, that's just it's just so generous.
Yeah. And she is, as an idealized character for that one person, such an odd fit, right? Because the film has no illusions. Spook
Yeah.
has all the illusions for us, but neither Jennifer Jason Leigh nor Leah Dell nor anybody else around them is supporting that fantasy. He is so completely just destined for disappointment
Yeah.
or disillusionment anyway. And somehow, yeah, the film and she and we get to have sympathy for that. We don't think he's an idiot. We believe in innocence through him. We're
Hmm.
given the
Hmm.
opportunity to hope for something. So yeah, it's a miserable situation, but I don't think everyone in it is miserable. I think they're finding happiness or joy or something, or they're looking for it at least. I mean, Harry Black is just out there spending money on stuff because he doesn't understand that he's not supposed to, but it is just clearly him just trying to make himself happy or comfortable in this miserable job where everybody hates him, and he's absolutely powerless to change the course of the negotiations.
Yeah. Yeah. What a character. That's kind of like, the local union rep during a big strike who presides over the beer stein in the union hall, and
Yeah.
is told that he can just, expense anything he wants. So he starts expensing his secret, queer, renegade lifestyle that he starts leading during the film, and just like, putting champagne receipts and taxi receipts until Jerry Orbach busts him. And it's just so sad when when he gets stripped of all his whole station in life. But yeah, yeah. Do people who watch the pod or listen to the podcast who haven't seen the films? I have this thing where if I haven't seen a film, what we're doing right now, talking in such detail about a film I've never seen, it's just kind of like it's like I don't necessarily like to read detailed criticism of films I haven't seen either. But I guess there are people who this kind of conversation is what leads them to a film. That's the different kind of person than what I am.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I wrote about the absolutely amazing 4K release of Ryan Coogler's Sinners, and this week I'll be tackling Warfare, Death of a Unicorn, The Monkey, and a few other things. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Semcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. I have to hope that people listening this far in will have seen it, gone off and watched it,
Mm.
or been drawn to it because they know the material. Generally, I find that with the podcast, it's either the guest or the choice that pulls someone in. So hopefully, people listening to it will be familiar with the text. But if they're not, I really do hope that this serves as an impetus for them to go out and find the film. I do know that people have been lured into discoveries that way. I don't know if they listen to the episode all the way through or if they stop after
Hmm.
5 minutes. I really hope they have seen the film. But also, there's this whole weird thing now where Wikipedia will give you the entire plot of a film with no sense of its tone or its texture or quality or performances. But all the information is out there. It's based on a novel that's been out there for decades and decades. The film itself is 36 years old, which is
Hmm.
so hard to get my head around because
Hmm.
it means I'm older than that. But but yeah, it's available if people want to see it. And I have to believe there have been episodes I've done where I find myself actively protecting something about a storyline or a
Mm-hmm.
performance. But
Mm-hmm.
in this case, I think it's more of an academic eye that we're throwing back. So feel free, discuss
Yeah,
whatever you
no.
want to.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious because yeah, I think the thing that I've probably been not mentioning, but it's Harry's demise, which is so sad. And it's kind of like it's even that, which is so unmentionable. He gets hammered after he gets fired, and he's staggering through the street, and the grocer's son finds him in the middle of the night, lost, and it's like, Mr. Black, you're drunk. And then Harry kind of, sort of zombie walks him towards another one of these derelict lots. So much of the movie happens behind, the fence in the derelict lot and along the waterfront and stuff. So he takes this grocer's son back there, and the filmmaker doesn't let you see anything. It all happens, we're pointed at the hole in the fence. But then, the boy comes running out, and of course, Harry has like tried to make a move on him, and then the whole neighborhood comes down on him and essentially crucifies him. And that's sort of the last sight you have of him, literally kind of thrust up on the fence post, gushing blood after everybody, including the grocer's son, has had a chance of kicking him in the balls. And even that is depicted by Selby and Edel in a way where, I mean, as heinous as what he's done is, you can't help but just feel like, God, he's so lost. And, he's at the utter, bottom. And this is what drives people to do these kinds of crimes. So it's sort of I guess, a humanistic kind of storytelling in a place that you would never expect humanity to exist. So, yeah, I think that is one of the unmentionable things. This is hard, although I think I've just articulated the way I feel about it. But it's, sometimes with the movie, it's easier to just watch it and ingest it than actually just talk about it after the fact.
I know it's such a strange position to be in when you're not even well, you're the advocate for a film that the odds are most people listening to this won't have seen, at least initially. And it's a hard film to sell too, because when you describe it, especially if you go as far as the dramatic trajectory of it, you're looking at a downer, right? Like objectively, this is a film where people come away. We came out shocked. We came out sort of hollowed out. In admiration for the accomplishment. It is like unquestionably, it does exactly what it wants to do in terms of the story it tells and the way it tells it, but it rips your heart out and steps on it for a whole bunch of time while it's doing that. And the point of this is that things will not end well for anyone. I
Hmm.
mean, the unions are going to get a small victory, but eventually we know where everything's going, right? Even if you can snatch joy for 5 minutes or 5 years,
Hmm.
you're looking at the other side of it. And
Hmm.
then,
Brooklyn is eventually going to get gentrified. There's going to
yeah,
be a huge IKEA built in Red Hook,
right.
right where they shot. Yeah.
There's a steak shack coming around the corner and Shake Shack. I always do that. But there is like this knowing where New York would end up in 40 years, even um, being gentrified into, an amusement park for millionaires and just the sense that organized labor is at its prime right now. It's having its peak moment of solidarity after the
Hmm.
war. There was a
Hmm.
constant, like there was a sense galvanized war effort that brought people together even more so. They came home and they had careers and jobs and the baby boom and everything else. And it's all for nothing.
Hmm.
Or not nothing, but I do think it's kind of shocking to think about the most marginalized group in that film is the one that comes out with a greater sense of self by now.
Yeah. There's another layer to the film which we can discuss, which is the military naval aspect, because right next to this huge group of strikers is the Brooklyn Navy Yards.
Yep.
And so there's tension between the street thugs who run Tralala's life and who do all the union's secret bidding behind the scenes. But they also target these Navy boys who come in from, the deep South and whatnot, not ready to contend with the mean streets of Brooklyn. And so the film actually opens with a fight between the local hoods and a bunch of I guess Marines or whatever they are coming back to the base and getting caught by the local hoods. And that an interesting note for me is 40 years after that, or 36 years after the film came out, and 70 years after the film was set, I ended up emceeing a friend's wedding on the Brooklyn Naval Yard base. That it's like an event center now. There's no Navy there anymore, and they shoot movies in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. There's studios in there,
Yep.
and people get married there, and so that's that. Yeah, and yet there's still public housing all around there too. It's still a little bit sketchy. It's not completely gentrified.
I have to ask, was it a themed wedding?
I just think that it was a cheap venue for my friends. And, I think they tend to be, last minute people. I think they were going to get married in Massachusetts until like a month before their wedding. They changed it to New York, which is where they live. They live in Brooklyn. And I think it was just available. And it's like a huge, huge space. So, you could have 10 weddings in there and they wouldn't know about each other. So, yeah, they just got the roof of one of these naval buildings, and I guess because I'm such a big personality, they thought that I would be a great MC. And I didn't know any of their local friends. And yet I kind of embodied this kind of Brooklyn, very much like Last Exit to Brooklyn, because there's a lot of weddings and baby showers and that kind of family stuff happening, right next to the Navy Yards in the film. So I just kind of channeled it and sort of became like a stand-up comedian. And yet, I looked out over the crowd and didn't know who any of them were.
I mean, did you work in Selby jokes? Did you? Can you riff on something like that?
I just remember thinking, I'm really tapped in. I'm just improvising. I'm making fun of the groom and the bride, and yet I don't really know a lot of the guests here, and yet I'm getting some good laughs. And afterwards, people thought that I was a professional wedding MC or wedding comedian. And yeah, I thought to myself, well, maybe I won't come back to Canada. Maybe I'll just stay in Brooklyn and just start a business where I can just host people's weddings for them, because it's obviously what I'm meant to do.
I've had moments like that too. It's like, I could do this for a living. I probably
Yeah.
shouldn't though. But speaking of unlikely jobs, okay, I'm segueing, but this is the one thing I wanted to ask you. Were you aware that there had been an earlier attempt to adapt the property by Ralph Bakshi, and he was going to cast De Niro as Harry?
I only found out about that in preparing for your podcast. I didn't go that deep beforehand in researching it. Yeah. I didn't know that. Yeah, there's, and of course Selby wrote Requiem for a Dream, the Aronofsky film, which I know you've covered, and then there's also Fear X, which was shot in Winnipeg, where I'm sitting right now, and with John Turturro. And I can remember when Fear X filmed here, and everybody was excited because John Turturro was staying at the Fort Garry Hotel, but it was only in prepping for your podcast that I realized that was another Hubert Selby film. And now I'm going to finally watch it, even though a lot of my friends are extras in it. And I never watched it until I still not watched it. And I'm going to see if maybe Selby does a cameo and that he was in Winnipeg and I really missed a chance to meet him.
So this would have been what, 2000 or so?
Yeah, it was like around the time that I was working with Guy Madden on Twilight of the Ice Nymphs. I think it came out it was after that, but before he did my Winnipeg in that era.
2003. I just checked it out.
Yeah,
I don't know why I think that's for some reason. Nicholas Winding Rain and
yeah. And my friend Dorena, she did the costumes. She's, done costumes on my films. I think her husband, Mark, and her son they cameoed in it in some way. I remember them talking about it. And I was just like, yeah, yeah, another like, runaway production, with John Turturro. That part's interesting, but I'm never going to watch it. And so now I have to watch it.
It's got some good ideas. It does not feel like Selby at all.
Mm.
Maybe insofar as that it's about someone trying to figure out what it is he wants, but only in the broadest possible sense. I'd be really interested to know what you think of it.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to check it out. I mean, actually, talking to you helped me delve deeper into Selby. I did read Last Sector to Brooklyn back in the day because I was so obsessed with it, but I didn't really know much about him. For instance, I always assumed he was queer because there's the sensitive telling of the queer stories. I thought this is a gay writer for sure. This is like a John Rushy type, but no, he wasn't. He was a merchant marine though, and he was from that neighborhood, and he got a horrible disease during World War II from cows. He got like some kind of cattle disease on the boat,
Ooh.
and he had his ribs taken out and his lungs taken out, and in this documentary that's available out there on YouTube about him, you see his body as he get ages, and it's just racked from years of typhoid and all these other horrible things and drug addiction too.
Yeah, I mean, I knew he died of heart disease, but I had no idea about that.
Yeah, like they say in the doc that all the money he made because Last Exit to Brooklyn as a novel did really well. I think it was Grove Press. He shot it all up. They said, "Where's the $60,000?" And he rolls up his sleeves and shows his track marks, and it's like, there it is. So, yeah, and he was lived a very marginal life, although he taught writing at UCLA or UC Irvine or one of these Californian schools. And but yeah, he had a very modest existence.
I suppose anybody living that sort of life is going to be less sequestered, right? Like you start. I mean, even in the Merchant Marine, he would have been exposed to people from everywhere, all sorts of people, places he'd never met, never experienced, and just his voice is so. I mean, given that he wrote stuff that could be seen as morality storytelling, especially Requiem for a Dream, where no one gets out of it well, and Last Exit also has a downward spiral to it all. He's not judgmental as an author, right? Like he's open to the
Hmm.
experiences and the lives of the characters that he's writing about. It's fiction, so he's creating them, but I'm sure he's drawing on personal experience and people he knew for everything.
Yeah, and if there's stuff you can see like Ellen Burstyn interviewing him around the time of Requiem, and he's got a very Zen Buddhist outlook on life. He seems like one of these people who just, whether it was, through copious heroin nights or whatnot, he just found a truth. He found a lot of, essential ways of being and existing and coexisting. And there's a lot of like the world according to Hubert Selby Jr. And it's surprising because he's completely self-taught, and he just kind of navigated this world of being kind of a literary sensation in America. With and Last Exit had a huge censorship trial in England when it came out, and in the States when the first chapter was published, also went to court. So, you know, it's pretty heady material to start a film with. And then back to the movie, so weird that ultimately it was this guy from Munich that came over to Brooklyn and made a $14 million film there. And, he wasn't a name director. I mean, he's done everything Uli Dale has done seems to be quite supported and significant. But you know, like you said, Al Pacino was in the running to play the role first, and that the first group of filmmakers who tried to package it but couldn't get it together. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that it went the way it did. But I'm not at all sad. I think, like we said before, an American version would have watered things down.
Oh yeah, especially made around that time or earlier.
Mhm.
You could probably, I mean, my great terror now is the way that any recognizable intellectual property or established adaptation is due for another run as a television series. Like someone will try to mount a 10 episode version of this for Apple TV or Netflix or Amazon. And while a case could be made that you could use more time and build a bigger canvas and really Berlin Alexander Platz this thing,
Mhm.
I don't know that that would work. I think that the adaptation, and we didn't even mention by Desmond Nakano, who is a Japanese American filmmaker whose biggest credit was probably, or he's still working, but his biggest credit to date that most people would know would be that weird John Travolta, Harry Belafonte movie, White Man's Burden, where it's a comment on race by flipping the script and having whites be the minority and blacks be the majority in America, and just doesn't. It,
Mm.
it's not well remembered for a reason, but he's onto something in his adaptation in the way that he collapses the canvas
Mhm.
and has everybody tripping over everybody else and staging
Mhm.
it in a really small space. I don't know that you could sustain that at episodic length without really breaking it apart and telling separate stories that then only occasionally interact. And again, the bustle is the point, right? That's the thing that Adele captures. He's in the middle of this society as
Mhm.
it's collapsing and
Mhm.
falling apart and putting itself back together.
Yeah, it's like Five Corners, that film,
Yes, yeah, that's an excellent example.
where it's about the intersection, and it's intersectionality, to use an overused word, but yeah. And I know that the adapter Nakano, he added the whole Burt Young, Ricky Lake aspect. That was something that really wasn't as big in the novel. And so that brought a lot more levity. And I love Burt Young, like in everything. And I'm so happy every time he's in the frame. And so, he plays this father figure whose daughter's knocked up, and he tries to, punch out the man who impregnated her and all that. And and all that was created by Nakano, and it was necessary. I think he probably said to Uli, like, "Listen, you got to lighten this thing up. There's like everybody's going to want to kill themselves after the movie. You need, and I think that because Uli Edel was this Catholic, German Catholic private school boy, he welcomed the idea of a thread that was about rebirth, the child, the virgin child, and all that, and the baptism, weddings and all that. And it is a great decision, because I think you really want to you want to watch Burt Young getting into fisticuffs at his daughter's wedding party and stuff like that, and it's it's brilliant. Yeah, Nakano did a great adaptation.
Yeah, it's a living, breathing thing. It doesn't feel like a period piece. It feels like we just turned a corner and it was all happening right in front of the camera.
Yeah, and I rewatched it last night at my friend Colin Aronson. He's like a cineast and a DJ, and we do a weekly film night. You would like it if you're ever in Winnipeg. You should come Monday
I'd love
nights.
to. Yeah, that sounds great.
And he has one of those really expensive TVs that sort of, and we only watched it on DVD because, as you said, the Blu-ray. They say there's a Blu-ray, but we haven't been able to find it. And his TV kind of processes the DVD and makes it so it's got a different look to it, but in a way, it looks incredibly fresh, like it was just filmed. And I remember, because if you watch the special features, there's like some making of footage,
Mhm.
which shows clips from the movie, which has like the original transfer, where it's like full of dust and grit and scratches and stuff. And that's the way I remember seeing it in theaters. And I'm probably even got a VHS of it at some point and watched it. But Colin's TV really upres the whole experience. And in a way, at first I was like resistant to it, because I was like, wait, I don't remember it looking that polished. But then I was like, yeah, this does feel, as you say, like, it could be contemporary. It could be like, a film that was made now, set in 1952.
Yeah, I'm wondering where it is right now because it was released in the US by Summit Entertainment, which ceased to exist years and years ago. I think they might have been folded in to Lionsgate somewhere along the line. Lionsgate just seemed to have snapped up a bunch of it, but maybe through it'll come out through the European side, and there's another way in. New Constantine must still have most of their stuff somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The materials
Mm-hmm.
must exist for a decent restoration.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anuli Dell's still alive, and Constantine's still around. I remember I met somebody with a business card from Constantine Films in the Cannes Film Festival, and I immediately thought of Last Exit to Brooklyn.
This is what I do now. I just start yelling at people to think about putting something out in a new restoration because it's happening. There's demand. There's got to be an audience for this, especially you just tack on from the author of Requiem for a Dream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We'll leverage it. We'll make it happen.
The Ricky Lake fans alone.
That's right. Stephen Lang fans. It's the most successful movie ever made. Avatar, I mean, not Last Exit to Brooklyn, but let's try leaning on it in that direction.
Well, I think Spielberg showed Last Exit to Brooklyn to his team. I think if you watch the bonus items or read all the interviews that are out there with Uli, you hear him talking about this, that it was screened privately in his production studio, and he brought everybody around and he was like, why aren't we doing this? Which is kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those polymaths, right? I mean, he taught himself everything, but he's still so fascinated by what other people do with the same tools that
Mm-hmm.
I can totally see him sparking to something like this because it does have a texture that he never really attempted. I mean, maybe in Schindler's List, there's a little of it, and not just because of the German crossover thing, but the sense of here and now realism in a period piece,
Yeah.
something that he hadn't tried before.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, because Empire of the Sun, which he'd made just a couple of years earlier, it's still glossy and pretty. So is The Color Purple. Like the most horrific acts are depicted in not stagey fashion, but in an aesthetically appealing fashion. And then with Schindler, he just threw that all away and went handheld and black and white.
And
Built
what
the whole
about
thing so he could run through it with a camera.
Private Ryan?
Ryan too, yeah. I mean, that's a lot. A lot of that is about demythologizing the myth of a war movie, right? Like everything in it happens the way you would expect it to happen in a war film, but nobody's enjoying it. The audience is never complicit in the violence. We're never encouraged to thrill to it. It's about being pummeled by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And this is kind of an awkward segue, but it does pop right into my mind now. The final question on the podcast is always, what, if anything, the guest has taken away from the film they've brought on? So I don't really see it. We were chatting about this just before we started recording, and I kind of see you have a sense in some of your work of viewing viewing an organization or a project or a community as cells within a whole, like as individual, playing up the individuals as well as the common cause.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of at play in here as well, but I don't know that that's a direct link, or that's just simply the best way to handle any story.
Well, if you're asking how Last Exit to Brooklyn could influence the filmmaking that I do, I see it more in terms of what I'm planning on doing, even though I've loved this movie since 36 years ago. And, it's always been there, but I don't think, I haven't had Uli Edel's, I guess the luxury of a great producer like he had. Not that not that my producers, there's anything wrong with them, but you talk to a lot of Canadian directors. We don't tend to make $14 million, and this is $1988 historical films that often. If you do the inflation, that would be something that a bigger budget than someone like Adam McGowan's ever gotten.
Fact, yeah.
And so it's like, how can you say something? It is a bit of an apples and oranges thing. Although I am thinking in terms of historical dramas these days, and so rewatching it I did think about this script that I'm working on and this project that's in development and thinking, how can I get that kind of Uli Edel Last Exit to Brooklyn time capsule quality and the production design, the performances, the wardrobe, like, the wallpaper, all of it. So you feel your jaw drops when you watch it and you do feel like you could have just rounded, as you say, you rounded the corner and this whole world's just happening. So yeah, the realism. It's something to strive to and try to, attain. It's a bar that's very high, sometimes the cloud parts and I can see it up there above there in the sky. I try to jump for it. I only get, 6 feet there, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. Yeah. And it's an aspirational goal.
Yeah. But yeah. And, if I can somehow manipulate my world to be closer to whatever Uli Edel's world was in 1988, that year when I first, hung out in the Lower East Side and hit New York. And if it could just sort of, put it all in the cauldron and drink it and go to sleep and wake up and it'll happen, that would be the dream.
My thanks to Noam Gonick, whose new documentary Parade: Queer Acts of Love and Resistance is now streaming free at nfb.ca/film/parade. You should definitely watch it. And if you're in Winnipeg, it's going to be screening at the Dave Barber Cinematheque starting July 30th. Noam will be there for a Q&A on opening night. Thanks also to Jennifer Mayer and Katja de Bock. They know what they did. You can find Noam on Instagram at Louis Benjamin Russell, all one word, LouisBenjaminRussell. And you can probably still find used copies of Last Exit to Brooklyn on Blu-ray and DVD if you look hard enough. It is also streaming on Prime Video, Canopy, Hoopla, Pluto TV, Plex, and the Roku channel in the USA, and available to rent or buy on various VOD services there, but nothing at all in Canada. So keep checking the disc stores. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 41 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, get all the boosters. I'll see you next week.